Good morning. In this week's parasha of Re'eh, we have the mitzvah of giving tzedakah, or really of giving the tithe, the 10% to the poor. And Hashem says, aser to aser, give. There's this double expression of giving. And the sages pick up on this, and they read it almost as a pun. They say, aser bishvil shetit asher. Give in order that you will become wealthy. That's the aser to aser. That through giving, we will become wealthy. And the idea here is, although we have a general mitzvah that we are not allowed to test Hashem, lo tenasu et Hashem Elokeichem, you can't challenge Hashem. If I do X, Y, Z mitzvah, then this will happen. Even though that's very much part of the boundaries of a respectful relationship with Hashem. Nonetheless, Hashem has given us one mitzvah in which this is absolutely acceptable, and that is the mitzvah of the tithe of this 10%. Now, there are those who say that this only applies when it comes to the actual giving of the tithe to the Levi. In other words, for a Jewish farmer in Israel taking 10% of his crop and giving it to the Levi, that's when you can test Hashem and say, Hashem, I'm giving, and I would now like to see the return on investment. Whereas with the tzedakah that we give today, such a test cannot be made. There are those who say that, although there are many who say that this test still applies to the tzedakah that we give today. When we make a donation, you can say to Hashem, Hashem, I have fulfilled what you've asked of me, and now I would like to see reward from you as well. And on a personal level, I myself have tried this a couple of times in my life, that there have been times when I gave tzedakah, and soon afterwards, a financial opportunity opened up, and I made some money that I wasn't lined up to make beforehand. However, a friend of mine asked me a question that he said he was going through a very difficult financial time, and nonetheless he insisted upon giving his 10%. And what happened was he found that things didn't improve in his financial situation. In fact, it became worse. So he asked me, how does he deal with it? So it was of some concern to me, and I looked into it and I did some research, and I actually came out with 9 different answers. I'd like to take you through those 9 answers, and then we can talk around them and discuss a little. So the first one is that maybe you need to give it a little bit more time. Maybe it's not something that just from giving once is going to make the change, but we need to give several times consistently in order to really get yourself into that zone, so to speak, that you're going to see that return on investment that Hashem's going to pay you back. In other words, Hashem doesn't do it for somebody who does it a little bit. Hashem does it when he sees consistency and commitment. That was the first answer. And the second one is something that Rabbeinu Yonah says, is that, although this is the general rule, there are times when Hashem uses this as an opportunity to cleanse you from Aveira. You've done the wrong thing, and Hashem's making it up. And how does he make it up? He makes it up through these hard times that we go through. Our sages tell us that there is a tremendously purifying effect in going through difficult and challenging times. And so, this person who gives tzedakah, and instead of seeing a return on investment, sees things go worse, that is a tremendously purifying thing for his soul. And so then you would have to say that this rule of Hashem saying you can test me and give tzedakah and you'll become wealthy is the general rule, but there are exceptions, and especially it's a rule really for a righteous person. Third answer is that it needs to be very regular, similar to what I said at the beginning. The fourth answer is that Hashem assigns our parnas, our sustenance, the income that we'll be getting from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. So whatever you're going to be giving is really only going to kick in for the next Rosh Hashanah. So you need to make sure that this year you have done it in such a way that by next Rosh Hashanah, you're going to be getting a proper return on investment. The next one is that we find that it is not always expected or demanded that a person will give the full 10% if they are in difficult financial times. Every person has an obligation to give, but not every person has an obligation to give 10%. So, for example, somebody who themselves are reliant on others for support is still obligated to give tzedakah. However, they would not be obligated to give that full 10%. When exactly they are and they aren't is beyond the purview of our discussion. But that's an important point as well. And in fact, what this friend of mine, when I was looking this up, I was consulting with a friend, said about the guy who gave the money and didn't see good results from it, that he said perhaps it was the wrong thing to do. If this man was struggling financially, maybe it was not correct to give so much, and so therefore maybe that's why it doesn't work. Maybe it only works when you're doing it responsibly or when you're supposed to. Another one which is similar to what Rabbeinu Yonah said is that this works for somebody who's pure of sin. But if there's a spiritual blockage, somebody's done something wrong and there's something that blocks it from working, then he's not going to see the sign of bracha. So this works together with teshuvah. See, Rabbeinu Yonah was really saying this works in place of the cleansing, purifying effect, whereas what we're saying over here is that this works together with teshuvah. The next answer is that perhaps, as I mentioned, perhaps really this does only apply to tithes. Perhaps in your case, Hashem has ruled that this doesn't apply to giving regular tzedakah. A further answer, and this is of the Chafetz Chaim, that he says that this only applies if you're giving money for Torah. It's not a general tzedakah. It's specifically when it comes to strengthening Torah study, and we'll speak more about that in a minute. But this return on investment that you see is when you donate money for Torah study, not when you donate money for social welfare or other such charities. And finally, the Aruch HaShulchan says on this, he says, you know what? I don't know. Usually it works, he says. Usually it works, but yes, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know why. Hashem knows why, and Hashem has a plan, and it's for the good. So that's a non-understanding, but an acceptance of that. So again, these answers, maybe you need to give it more time. Maybe you need to do it more regularly. Maybe Hashem is purifying you through these difficult times. Maybe the system kicks in from Rosh Hashanah. Maybe you shouldn't give if you're struggling financially. You need to make sure that you're really in a position to give that full 10%. Don't check too carefully, because then nobody would give 10%. Then you also need to take into account that maybe you have other things to your spiritual detriment that you need to make up for. Maybe the truth is that it only applies to tithes and giving your agricultural produce to the Levi. Another suggestion is that maybe it only works when we're giving for the support of Torah, not for general tzedakah. And finally, I don't know, but Hashem knows what He's doing. So those are the answers. Just to now spend a little bit of time in this idea of Hashem, the idea of giving for the support of Torah, and that's something that the Ramban, I beg your pardon, suggests over here. So he says, we see that you should separate 1 from 10 for those who toil in Torah, for those who are studying Torah. And the Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky wants to know, what is the connection between the tithe that we're giving here to the Levi'im and those who are studying Torah? So the straightforward connection is that the Levi'im work as the teachers and scholars, and they work in the temple for the nation. They don't have a plot of land. And so we make up for that. We give them an income from our 10%, and so too the Torah scholars. But Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky is not so satisfied with that. He says this is not really the place. We don't really see such a connection. What he wants to suggest is that it is the Maaser Sheni, the second tithe. See, 4 years out of 7 in the Shemitah, in the sabbatical cycle, you would give your 10% to the Levi that you do every year. 4 years out of 7, you take another 10% of what's left, in other words, 9%, and you're going to take that yourself on a pilgrimage up to Yerushalayim, and you and your family and everyone else will eat that produce or redeem it and buy food for that value and rejoice and celebrate in Yerushalayim. Now, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says, what's the purpose of this? This is not just a nice time. This is a very educational, deeply spiritual journey. Because you are going to go and you're going to be in Yerushalayim and you're going to be surrounded by the holiness of the city and you're going to see the temple and you're going to be with everyone else who's come to be spiritually uplifted. And so this is an incredibly positive spiritual investment. And that, he says, is the correlation over here. Just as we would give 10% for Maaser Sheni for a great spiritual enrichment, so too, he says, you give 10% to support the study of Torah. Oh, but I know what you're wondering. But the Maaser Sheni is only 9%, and here we're talking about giving 10% to tzedakah. This is a wonderful answer. That first 10% that you gave to the Levi never belonged to you anyway. Out of the 90% that is actually yours, 10% you're giving to spiritual inspiration and enrichment, and that's the idea of this Maaseh Sheni. That's the idea of investing in the study of Torah. Have a wonderful Shabbos.